Hello and welcome. I'm Highsea, and this is the Katchup, where I try in vain to keep up with the more current seasons of Tokusatsu. And we're back again catching up with Kamen Rider Build, this time episodes 17 through 22. This video has been a long time coming. In fact, it's been a few months. Basically, I watched episode 17 right after I watched episode 16, and then I continued on to 22 while I was on a plane ride to California to go to PMC, where I filmed a bunch of stuff and never ended up having time to sit down and turn it into a video. So, oops. Then my professional life took over and all those notes went to the wayside, and before I knew it, this video was on the back burner and it went from August to being almost the end of the year. So, sorry about that, but I'm really excited to finally get this out of the way, mostly so I can go back and catch up with Kamen Rider Build past episode 22, which I've been dying to do over the last couple of months, but haven't allowed myself until I finally finish this video. So as always, everything from this point on is spoilers. Please stop watching if that is something that would bother you. With the way Build is written, I will be going through episode by episode, talking about it, so it will spoil everything. But the short version is, Build is great. You should go watch it. It's an emotional roller coaster. It has a ton of twists. It's a great show, and I'd much rather you go and experience the show for yourself than listening to me or giving me views on this video. So please go do that. So please, if you are gonna watch Build, do not proceed forward. But if you already have, or you just don't think you're gonna take the time, go on and keep watching. Last warning, starting now. So on the last catch-up episode of Build, I said episode 16 felt like it was the best place to stop. And I was right. Build has felt like a movie, and this 100% feels like the second installment. So starting with episode 17. The countries are torn apart in the midst of a war, and Sento and Banjo are giving no other option for Jintoku but to join and become instruments of war. Sento is still in deep mental strife, trying to make amends with his identity, while Banjo is still trying to clear his name. The whole country is in the echoes of war. Bodies are laying in the street. Mizora is taking all of the responsibility on her shoulders, bringing Banjo and Sento up the Hokoto Trio, or the Three Crows as I'll probably refer to them more, with the abilities to transform into Heart Smashes, making them the most difficult enemy yet. I really like these three a lot. They tend to be more comedic and slapstick, but they have a really defined reason to exist. I'll talk more about that later, but like everything in Build, there hasn't really been any superfluous characters. Like others, they turn into smashes, but unlike others, they've retained the ability of their sense of self and can control what they're doing. And as the smashes, the trio are the Castle, the Stag, and the Owl, easily besting Banjo and Sento while taking their full bottles, but ending up in an argument over who got them the best. Back at the lab, Sento reveals the Splash Driver, available in toy stores everywhere. But Sento doesn't want Banjo to use it. He's reformed all of his full bottles into jellies. I kind of dig the jellies being like the next step of full bottle for Banjo, since it's like this little play on Japanese protein jellies. But Sento is trying to avoid his inevitable fate of the two of them being turned into dogs of war. But Banjo doesn't take this as kindly, calls Sento a coward. That Sento is responsible for this war breaking out, and I've said it before, I'll probably continue to bring it up, but man, the acting in Build is really some of the best I've watched in Toku. And beyond Toku, they're just great physical, dramatic performances. Sento playing the part of the reluctant soldier, unable to accept his place in battle. He's the guy who's fought for justice and to save innocents, but now he knows that was all for nothing. His righteous acts were used to start a war. And while that's an okay story beat, it's really the physical acting that drives those feelings home. It doesn't play as a throwaway line of dialogue. It's more of an emotional response. It's a physical sight to see. It fully explores the fact that we're watching a show, we're not reading one. Banjo doesn't want to be a tool for war, but he has to put that aside. So he knows there's no longer any other available paths to him. So going from one emotional scene to another, Mizora has run off. Sento and Banjo run off to look for her, while Banjo runs into another smash. But he's quickly interrupted by everybody's favorite, Katsumi, who defeats a smash in one punch, untransformed. Meanwhile, Mizora stands in the middle of a battlefield. Buildings are knocked down. Children are screaming for their parents that they'll never see again. Mizora takes all of that responsibility on her shoulders. If she didn't create the full bottles and help create Build, none of this would have happened. She has a complete mental breakdown and falls to the ground, punching it, trying to rip her bracelet off her arm. Sento finds and embraces her. He doesn't think she's responsible for it. He thinks he is. And in the middle of this great emotional scene, the three crows show up and start to mock them. And Sento knows he's already made peace. He's going to have to be the tool of war to protect Mizora and the innocents in between. He has to choose to continue being a Kamen Rider. Him and Mizora created Build through manipulation, but the ideals that they built him on have never changed. So they take a battle to the woods where Banjo is managing to fight them off, but is still struggling. But Banjo shows up with the Splash Driver, transforming him into Dragon Cross Z, getting all of their full bottles, at least until Katsumi shows up. Episode 18, Katsumi joins the battle with his own Splash Driver, identical to Banjo's. Using the robot jelly, he transforms into Kamen Rider Grease. Alright, now I'm gonna digress here for a minute and just say, this is the first full fight scene I ever saw from Kamen Rider Build, but not in the context of Kamen Rider Build. For anybody unaware, I voiced Ken in Karn's Power Rider Fusion, where I bully Protodubs. Power Rider Fusion is a what if Kamen Rider is adapted into a 90s style Saban show. If you haven't checked it out, link in the description. Anyway, talking about Dragon Cross Z and Grease. I like both of their suits, but I don't love either of them, and they're made to reflect each other. I just feel like it's a big step down to Banjo's Cross Z suit. But that's really all I have to say. I think they're cool suits, and Grease is awesome, and I kind of like the two fighting each other more than them separate. Grease and Dragon Cross Z fight, Banjo loses, and like any good villain, Katsumi says, "I'll see you next time." Them heading back to the lab and Sento scolding Banjo for stealing his Hero Thunder, which is a really good moment because I really needed some levity over the intensity of the previous episode. Sento gets a call from Soichi, they talk to Gentoku, they get interrupted by Grease on a broadcast, they get into another fight with the three crows. Sento uses the Phoenix robot and Wolf smartphone. I really like the Phoenix robot form, but we need to talk about the Wolf smartphone, particularly the smartphone part. And I don't know, some people might love it, but man, is this thing goofy. If you think it's cool, that's fine, but this form is maybe the most hated thing I've seen in this show so far. We get a few more moments of Sento and Banjo bonding, and Sento struggling with Banjo holding all the weight because he's able to transform. Not that we don't know that the show's called Build. Grease destroys Banjo and finishes him off with a rider kick, but Sento steps in and sacrifices himself, telling Banjo to get it together and knock off that "no one will care if I die" bullshit. Ending with a quick flash of Utsumi still being alive in front of Jintoku. Episode 19. Grease is back at the lab with Bloodstock, and up until now we haven't had much information on Grease outside of the fact that he doesn't have memories, a lot like Sento at the beginning of the show. We find out that the three crows were farmers who worked on Katsumi's farm, and they are indebted to him for taking care of them once Pandora's box opened and destroyed all of their livelihood. Katsumi wants his hazard level raised, but Bloodstock says he can't raise his level yet, but can raise the three crows level with one deterrent: if they get defeated while they're transformed, they'll die. So even though Grease does not remember them as his friends, he still has a high affinity towards them as soldiers. So he refuses Bloodstock to allow them to push them into the experiment. But Bloodstock had them secretly in earshot a few feet behind him the whole time. They're willing to do this behind his back so that they can help him because they know he would never allow them to. It's a good story beat. It turns them on to hazard triggers, which makes them just a little more powerful and makes it so now you have 4 powerful people going up against the already outnumbered Sento and Banjo. So fast forward to the fight, and Sento outfights and outperforms Grease because hazard level alone is no measure of somebody's ability. But the new hazard smashes show up quickly and take out Sento and take all of his full bottles. Banjo is now power hungry. He wants to fight, but he wants to fight to take the responsibility that Sento feels away. He thinks the only way to do that is to win the war. The only way to win the war is to become more powerful. Sento and Banjo keep getting in arguments over it, leaving Mizora again in the middle, being pulled both ways. Going after the hazard smashes, Banjo uses the Hawk Essence and flies after them, but he's overloading himself. His body can't take anymore, so his henshin deactivates mid-flight. Mizora races over to him. He's badly injured, but uses some new power and heals all of his wounds. But not without repercussion. She passes out and falls to the ground, leaving Sento alone as Bloodstalk shows up, but giving him a present, the hazard trigger, the forbidden device. Episode 20. Sento gets the hazard trigger. Grease is mad at the crows for engaging, worried that they'll end up killing themselves as hazard smashes. This is a really good reflection of Sento in the beginning of the series, because as Katsuragi, he was arguably a bad person, and his transformation without the memories led him to be a better person, while Katsumi has been a good person before and is still a good person now. Sento learns that if he uses the hazard trigger for more than a short time, he'll go into a berserk mode and start attacking everybody around him, regardless of his affinity towards them. Banjo continues to fight with everything he has, damaging his body in the process. Mizora continues to heal him over and over, but every time she does, she damages herself more. Mizora just wants the war to be over and asks if Jintoku wasn't in charge of the country, would this war have happened? Mizora and Sawa, who hasn't had a whole lot of screen time or purpose, sneak into the hospital where the Prime Minister is still in a coma. Mizora uses her healing powers and bam, he's all better. This leads to a bunch of battles with the Prime Minister, seeing Jintoku get beat by Sento, who becomes humiliated. Jintoku claims he'll come back stronger than before. Go Zio. Sorry, couldn't resist. But Banjo's in trouble, so Sento goes to help him, using the hazard trigger to save Banjo, turning into the uncontrolled switch, Black Hazard. Maybe one of my favorite forms so far. Might just be because I like black clothing, but I really love the Black Hazard suit. Episode 21. So I love the Black Hazard suit, and Sento eventually goes and annihilates everybody, just completely wipes them out. Then he gets an overflow to his brain where he shuts down like a robot, kicks back into kill mode, and then continues to beat on everybody mercilessly, including Banjo, who's trying to stop him. 2 of the 3 crows escape, but just barely. But unfortunately for the stag, he's not quite so lucky. Sento grabs him by the horns and destroys him, but he doesn't just defeat him, he kills him. Sento hasn't wanted to fight. He has refused to be a tool of war, of hatred, or destruction. He wants to save everybody, including his enemies. And now, he's taken one of their lives. Katsumi, this was one of his greatest allies, even if he doesn't remember their history together. But seeing him die triggers something innate inside of him. He gave them all one order before the fight. Don't die. That's the rule. And he couldn't live up to that. I love this entire sequence. I watched this on a plane ride where I had 2 guys sitting next to me, probably stealing glances at my screen, thinking I'm watching some weird Power Rangers thing. And I'm tearing up because it's a really impactful scene. It's done really well. You get the emotional weight. You have Katsumi, who's losing a family member, and you have Sento, who's done something he'll never be able to live off. I love this show. The episode's only been on for 10 minutes. Flash to a few months later, Sento is completely lost, unable to deal with the grief of taking somebody's life. Banjo blames himself for pushing Sento into that situation. The government declares that the war will be ended by a fight. Toto needs Sento to be Build and defeat Grease, but Sento can't fight. He can't become Build. He can't risk losing himself again. He goes to the spot where Adobo, the stag beetle, died. He brings flowers, hoping to make some kind of peace, but only ends up breaking down further, losing himself. But Grease is there waiting. But Grease just walks past, wanting to pay tribute to his fallen ally and grieve in his own way. Sento grabs his legs and grovels to him, begging him to beat him until he's satisfied. for a way to repent for what he's done. But there's no way to atone for it. There's no way to apologize. He took something from Katsumi that he can never give back. He tells Sento, bring the battle to the end. His comrade was just fodder for the war. He was a soldier. He knew going into battle could mean death. He was told not to die, and he did. He admired and cherished his friend, but he knew the risks. He held that resolve until the end, and he expects Sento to be able to do the same. Then steps in Bloodstalk, telling Sento he has no choice but to fight, but that he'll train him to win the battle. Sento is going to have to master his new full bottles, but with little time. And with that, shakes 2 bottles, ejects them into the driver, and the iconic "Are you ready?" plays as you get a flashback of everything that Sento has gone through to bring him to this point. So the question stays out there. Is he ready? He has to make the choice if he's going to fight or not. The answer? Henshin. Build has had a lot of really amazing episodes, and I have to remind myself, this is a kid's show, but this one is painful, where the good guy kills somebody, then has to wrestle with PTSD and guilt, left unable to move on with his life. I don't expect this scene to have the same effect on everybody, but for me, it felt very real and very powerful. And it goes well beyond the confines of a Henshin hero show. It's really one of my favorite episodes of any show I've ever watched. The man who refused to be a tool of war, but had to submit. And in wars, people die. Cry havoc, and let loose the dogs of war, that this foul deed shall smell above the earth, with carrion men groaning for burial. Episode 22. This is it, what I've dubbed the War of the Rider Systems. All coming down to a final battle between Katsumi and Sento. Sento is war-torn, and Katsumi has a friend to defend, gripping his fallen comrade's dog tags before he transforms. 2 titans ready to battle as a country watches, waiting for what fate befalls the victor. But let's take a step back before the battle as Banjo assaults Sento for taking the spot of the representative, with Mizora, as usual, stuck in the middle between the two. As Banjo rushes out in anger, jumping back to the fight, we get 2 new forms, Rose Helicopter and Tora UFO. Rose Helicopter is fine if a little confusing as to how it works. Tora UFO I find cool, but probably because it slightly reminds me of Power Rangers Jungle Fury, but we won't go there. But everybody now knows that the bottles that Sento has are borrowed, leaving everyone to know that Bloodstalk is pulling his 100th double cross for the series. Grease was not ready for all these changes and is quickly losing the battle. Jumping back to when Katsumi was first exposed to nebula gas by Bloodstalk, we learned that he has been faking his amnesia this entire time, hoping that if his friends thought that he didn't remember them, that they wouldn't follow him into battle and have the same fate. But Bloodstalk only saw this as a way to manipulate something that he cares about. Remembering what he's fighting for, Grease starts to fight back and beat Build down. Jumping back to before the bout when Banjo left in anger, Sento asked Mizora, the girl who in my opinion has gone through more hell than anybody, who's lost more than anybody and is constantly the anchor point for her 2 adoptive brothers, is asked to take Sento's life with a device that he created as a failsafe if he can't control the hazard trigger. He says it doesn't matter, he's just a weapon now anyway. Mizora quickly cuts him off, demanding that he understands what he's asking her to do. The girl who's lost everything is being forced to kill off the only family she has left. Build uses the hazard trigger and quickly starts to beat Grease, as his mind starts to become overloaded. Grease falls to the ground and his rider system fails. With the failure of the rider system, Toto wins. This would be great, except Build is still in kill mode. His enemy is untransformed, but he isn't dead, as Build sets his sights on him, with Mizora the only one who can stop him. As Build winds back and goes to take a final blow to an untransformed Katsumi, Mizora cries out and grasps the device. But psych! Banjo's there to save the day with the power of friendship. Banjo's grabbing Build's punch, but he doesn't stand a chance against the overloaded hazard trigger Build. Banjo tries to fight back, but he is quickly pummeled. But Banjo digs deep and raises his hazard level and is able to withstand Build for a little while, as the 2 lay fatal blows on each other, forcing each other to transform. The 3 crows call out Grease for pretending he has amnesia. Mizora is relieved she doesn't have to kill her family member. And it's a little too perfect, but I honestly don't care. After some of those really emotional, heavy moments, I needed to be reminded that this is a joyous kids show at the end of the day. But back to Bloodstalk, who has overthrown yet another government. I can only guess that it isn't the end of the Rider War, because after all, we have about 40 episodes left. And we're introduced to yet another adversary, this time in purple, with a funky full bottle and a splash driver. So again, I'm left feeling like I just ended a great movie. Episode 22 was the perfect place to stop, and when I was watching this on a plane, episode after episode, I knew this was the spot I needed to take a break and do another catch-up episode. But I did expect that video to be done a month or two ago, so again, sorry. But I'm back and I'm really excited to pick the show back up again. When I started going over my notes, I started rewatching all the episodes in order to do this video and be refreshed with the series. And I got just as swept up the second time as I did the first time, and I am just chomping at the bit to watch more. I care so much about the fights inside of the show because the drama elements are just so good and the story beats really work. If I have to say something negative, I'll say I really hated the fight location for that last final bout between Build and Grease. It was just a CGI kind of caged environment with truss everywhere, and something about it just didn't really work for me. And sometimes I do feel like Build gets so many forms with the different full bottles that sometimes it kind of takes something away. Like, I wish he had a smaller repertoire of abilities to pull from, so I'm like, I know what he has, and maybe give him new forms more sparingly. But I also know it's there to sell toys, so I guess you get what you get. But I can't wait to see where the show goes with Sento going to war. I'm just so excited. I feel stupid for how excited I am. It's just been too long and I can't wait to jump into new episodes. So thank you everybody, I'm Highsea, and this has been the catch up for Kamen Rider Build episodes 17 through 22. And I will see you next time where I try to catch up while hopelessly being left behind. Thank you guys.